Great. James, how are you?
I'm doing good, Christian. How are you today?
I'm in Southern California in the desert, Palm Springs, California. It's right now. It is 118 degrees. What is that? 44 Fahrenheit, something like that. It's hot. It's hot. That's all we know.
Well, today we're going to be talking about your upcoming action thriller, Vigilante Diaries, which stars Paul Sloan, Jason Mewes, Quentin Rampage Jackson, and Michael Madsen. But before the movie, there was a TV series of the same name, which you directed back in 2013. Was a movie based on the TV show inevitable, or did the idea come to you later on?
No. It all came from the web series. So in 2013, Paul Sloan and I, just being huge fans of, Marvel and Punisher and graphic novel stuff, we always, to pass the time between projects, we were trying to do something fun. And I called up Jason Mewes, and he's a good buddy of mine, and we said, why don't we do this crazy, like a really crazy, hard, rated R, no holds barred web series where we kind of do like an homage to, crazy graphic novel stuff and do like an action comedy. And we premiered that at the San Diego Comic-Con in 2013. And, the web series had a couple episodes on machinima and things like that, and it kind of just died down. And a year later, producer and actor Mike Hatton approached us with another exec producer and said, hey, what about revisiting Vigilante Diaries as a movie? You already have 20 minutes of this stuff shot. Why don't we just go shoot another hour and make a feature length of it? So that's how the first iteration of Vigilante Diaries came to be. So it always stemmed from the web series.
So a movie was inevitable one way or the other.
It seemed that way. Vigilante Diaries is a very rare breed, and it seems to have like a life of its own. It's like every time we think we're done with it and it's over, or something's not going to go right, it just kind of comes around in a different way. So we've just really gone for the ride in and of itself, and really have stuck to the guns of what it always has been. It's just a crazy segmented journey, of diary entries where it's just we just really wanted to stick to that kind of 90s action comedy craziness, real cliche fun stuff.
Well, the movie is about a team of black ops agents turned crime fighters led by a brooding anti-hero known only as the Vigilante, who's played by Paul Sloan. And one thing I noticed is that the film feels like a throwback, and like you said, to the action-adventure movies of the 80s and 90s, where the story is fast-paced, action-packed, and filled with plenty of throwaway lines. Did you deliberately set out to make the movie in that vein?
1,000,000%, absolutely. That's the idea of this is what we wanted to do. It was just, we wanted to just make a really crazy, fun throwback movie to like 90s Michael Bay, Bruckheimer stuff like Bad Boys and things like that, where it's all just fun. I mean, if in the movie you realize like you'll have some very serious moments, and all of a sudden we'll throw in a throwaway line or some comedy stuff. And at every given turn, I think, we're as serious as some of the shots and the action and some of the scenes are, in the next corner you round about in the story, and it's like, oh no, these guys are just having fun, and this isn't a serious movie at all. This is really just for fun. It's really just for fun. This is something that we wanted to just do, with a bunch of fun guys and our buddies like, Madsen and Trejo and Rampage and everybody, and just really make a cool, action-packed genre indie.
Well, it worked because I think probably like yourself, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and into the 90s I had a great love for anything action-oriented. So I got that early on in the movie, and I loved the throwback to that era. Now, early on in the film, Raven, one of the bad guys, is about to kill Vigilante, but she kisses him first and states, "That's how we say goodbye in London," obviously a reference to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And then later on, he calls a young boy Short Round, and then after beating up two bad guys, exclaims, "Boring conversation anyway." And then in the end, when he's trying to disarm the nukes, he's given the code of 1138. So I have to ask, why all the George Lucas references?
Well, I mean, this is, again, growing up in the 80s, I mean, Star Wars was everything to me, just as a kid, I couldn't have been a bigger Star Wars fan. And growing up in the 80s and, Star Wars and, Lucas and Spielberg and those guys that was it. I mean, this is, where other filmmakers are forged by, like the Scorsese and the Kubricks of the late 70s and things like that. What makes up me as a movie maker is the Spielbergs and the Lucases of the 80s. That's kind of everything we reference, everything we think about. I mean, it's all from those mainstream popcorn action adventure movies. So, everything we do, me and my cinematographer, or Paul Sloan, when we're writing, we're constantly referencing these movies. And so Vigilante Diaries is that movie that you can make a reference within a movie. You could just throw away these lines in the movie because the movie isn't serious. It's all just one big comic booky type movie. And so we're like, if we're ever going to have a chance to throw some fun Star Wars lines in there and kind of use them as our own, but as a kind of nod to people like yourself that totally got it. And another part in the beginning of the movie when Vigilante's being tortured and the guy has the AK-47, that's a total RoboCop homage, when he was doing this kind of like before they blow off what's his name, his arm, he does the the whole it's a RoboCop thing. So there's a lot of little things in there that's like, guys, this is just our love letter to 80s, 90s action flicks.
Like you, I grew up with, and Spielberg and Lucas in the 80s, you couldn't get better than that. Kubrick and Scorsese were fine, but like you, and for me, Lucas and Spielberg were it. You shot the movie in America, the UK, Scotland, and Armenia, and it gave the film an international flavor, much like the James Bond movies. What was it like as a filmmaker to be able to travel all around the world making your project?
As an indie filmmaker, that's the dream, right? The dream is to be, and again, my aspirations are to be making these really huge studio tentpole movies. I mean, that's what I want to do. That genre is my genre. So, I mean, this is the way that I can step up as a filmmaker to the studio system and to that thing and say, hey, we can go make off an international action picture and make it feel like a studio picture, on some level with, obviously with not even a quarter of their budgets, So to travel, overseas and make a movie was amazing. And this type of movie was even better because you got to shut down the capital city of Armenia, which is Yerevan, and, do these huge car chases and, you have 500, 1,000 extras of locals, and you're doing foot chases through there. Just really a lot of fun stuff. And then of course, going to the UK and actually shooting in front of Big Ben and actually shooting in front of the Eye, and and then going and seeing some buddies that I have in Scotland, Glasgow, having them do some of the really cool little throwaway fight choreography stuff where the vigilante's kind of trying to get some intel, and he's just very Jason Bourne-esque, or Bond-esque. They're just going from city to city trying to get some intel, and that was it. So it was a dream. It was amazing. That we can't wait to do it again.
Well, I love the fact that you did shoot because there are so many action movies that pretty much take place in one country or even one city. So I love when the filmmaker isn't afraid to take it overseas, and I love that aspect of the movie.
And it also kind of leads into the whole idea of these segments of what the movie is, right? The movie isn't one linear movie. It's all over the place, and it's every little segment or diary entry as we have it, has its own feel. And so we always wanted to make that, the third act diary entry to feel like, that's the international part of the picture. That was America, never going to go back, that kind of idea.
Right. Well, Michael Madsen has appeared in many of Quentin Tarantino's movies, but he's also lent his name to a lot of truly independent films. How did you manage to get him involved in the production?
Michael Madsen is a good friend of Paul Sloan and producer Nick Villalonga. And so when, they called Mike and of course for somebody like me, I always wanted to have a veteran actor play the guy who trains the vigilante, right? It's very like the way Albert Finney did Jason Bourne, the whole Bourne section where you accept the program and things like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a very kind of heavy veteran actor to play this. And I mean, we had talked about, like Tom Berenger and other guys, this and that, and, they mentioned Mike Madsen. I was like, dude, I would freaking love Mike Madsen to do this. And so, Mr. Blonde, Sonny Black, Bill, Bud, it's like, man, so, he agreed to do it and he came on, and I really think he added just a lot of weight to that role, and and just kind of having Bud, I always say Bud because I'm just a ginormous Kill Bill fan, having Madsen basically narrate the movie in a way where he opens it up and kind of, you go back to him and he's telling the story in the bar of how how this crazy story came to be, in essence. You know,
Right.
I think it just adds all that weight because it's like, you know, Madsen, when he talks, people listen.
Right, that's right. They don't want their ear cut off.
Yep, exactly.
Did you choose to shoot the film using widescreen angles and tracking and Steadicam shots because it was a throwback to the movies of the 80s and 90s, which were typically shot that way, or is it your particular style of filmmaking?
I think it's my style. I don't think we tried to do stylistically a throwback style. It was more tone, right? So it was more like the throwback was more about the content and the genre and the stuff. I mean, I think stylistically is kind of, you know, me, I always try to, you know, mix it up so it's not just a complete handheld movie. It's, you know, you're just keeping it very dynamic, you know. So we're going from handheld stuff to really epic wide shots to just cool tracking shots to, you know, just making sure that we're always doing something with that camera.
Well, I love that particular style of filmmaking. The handheld I can take in small doses, but the last two
Right.
Bourne movies, for example, Paul Greengrass, the director, just, I think, went overboard and made them almost unwatchable. So I'm so glad you chose the other option, which I prefer myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like I said, I mean, you know, I'm always a guy that's like, take the camera off the sticks, but, you know, at least get it moving, you know. I mean, there's definitely a time and place for locked off shots and this and that, but again, you're making an action movie. You know, for instance, like I just watched The Conjuring 2. James Wan, absolutely, he was so great, but I mean, he kept that camera moving, and he made sure that, yes, you're watching a movie in one house, but that camera always moved. He did some amazing stuff with that. So I think it's the same idea, you know, in an action picture. You better keep something, you know, visually moving, you know, at all times.
Are you working on any upcoming projects that you can talk about?
I mean, I have a Something for Universal, which is a reboot at the end of the year, which I can't quite announce yet, but I have 2 sci-fi movies with stars, and then Paul Sloan and the whole team, we're doing a movie called 1000, which is a action thriller, like very much like Heat or Training Day.
Oh, terrific.
That starts shooting in the fall. Yeah, that's going to be really fun.
Okay. Well, folks, today I was speaking with Christian Sesma, the director of the upcoming action thriller Vigilante Diaries, which stars Paul Sloan, Jason Mewes, Quentin Rampage Jackson, and Michael Madsen, and which hits select theaters and iTunes this coming Friday, June 24th, and will be available on Blu-ray, DVD, and video on demand July 5th. Christian, thanks so much for your time, and best of luck with the opening of the movie.
Thanks so much, James.
All right, you take care.
Cheers, mate.